So James is our change manager for our ASaTS program. ASaTS is the program of work which is going to replace the Land Online cadastral survey and title system that we have in LINZ, and it stands for Advanced Survey and Title Services.
And I think what we could, for international people, New Zealand has a world-class registration system where land surveyors, licensed surveyors, and conveyancers connect directly to the government's registry and maintain it directly. So the department is basically the owner of the registry and manages that. And we're looking at going to a generation 2.
So this slide really was James just outlining what LINZ does. We're an agency where we are primarily about, or a large part of our business is property rights through our survey system and our titles. We also regulate the rating information system in New Zealand, and we also have a team where we manage and create topographic data and nautical charts across our land and sea. And we also have a role in geodetic surveying. What else was he saying? Yep. So the Advanced Survey and Title System, as you can read, it's a project for updating and expanding the range of services offered by our existing Land Online system, which is all about property transactions. Now, Land Online, when it was introduced, it was a world-class system, but it's been around for about 20 years now. And yes, it's a system in which every New Zealand which is used every time a New Zealander buys or sells or subdivides a property, and for those other uses. But I guess one of the drivers for wanting to replace Land Online is that it's quite old now. At this point, James usually says it's monolithic and built on Power Builder, which is an old technology and is no longer supported. So we do have some big drivers to be moving away from our existing system and onto something new. If every time we want to make a change to the existing Land Online system, it takes about 6 months to propagate that change through. The most recent change we made was for recording tax status of overseas buyers, and it took about 6 months for that change to go all the way through to system to implementation. And that's because when you make a change, because it's a monolithic system, you need to test the whole system. And that's now considered a very inflexible way of delivering those systems.
And I think possibly another point is that it's very much focused on delivering the services for that cadastral system, land title and surveys. There's an enormous amount of valuable data in there that it can be used across the rest of the economy. And we have a way at the moment that we make that data available to other parts of the economy through a separate data service. And there might be other ways to do that with a modern solution.
Now at this stage, James reads the benefits that you can see on the slide. The benefits of ASaTS. So the bottom one there, linking property information across government. At this point, when I've seen James give this talk, it's usually been myself and James Mowat and our Valuer General. We do a series of 3 talks, and James at this point usually says, and Mike will then give you a talk about linking property information. That's obviously not what we're going to be doing today. But he then reads up the stack of benefits about moving to this new our new more modular ASaTS platform, and the rest of the talk picks out a couple of these benefits and looks at them in more detail. So here he's talking about the benefits of users to our datas. Already an important group of customers for us. And he talks about the LINZ data service, and we've got about 20,000 people a year using the LDS, and he's got a figure there that about 14.8 terabytes of data downloaded from it every year. Now, we do release all of our property information through the LINZ data service. Again, one of the drivers behind ASaTS is that it will help us collect and manage more sophisticated data that we can then make available to those customers. And another driver behind ASaTS, and this is one of James's favourite slides, it's related to the way we're changing our land use. And the way James explains it in the slide is if you look at the left side of this slide, you can see the way we traditionally viewed our property, which is a single title and a single parcel of land. And as you move across to the right, more and more we're going to be living in these vertical villages, and we're moving into a 3D space where we have unit titles. So our view of land is changing, and the systems we need to manage and organise the information for those systems are changing as well, particularly into a vertical 3D world. And our current system, Land Online, is a 2D system. We're moving into a 3D world with ASaTS. So, on the left there, you can see what a current survey plan looks like. That's the way we currently view survey information in Land Online. And one of our previous Surveyor Generals made the comment that surveyors survey things in 3D. They provide us with 3D packages of information, and then when it comes into Land Online, we panel beat it down to a 2D plan, and all that rich information is lost. So the aspiration is that we're proposing with ASaTS to move into a 2D state, and then, as you can see, into a full 3D environment. Because that's the way surveyors, engineers, architects, that's the way councils are working with this information now. But currently, our current system isn't sophisticated enough to be able to store that information. So 3D data will provide a richness of information that we don't currently have, and it will allow us to visualise and represent those rights, restrictions and responsibilities in a much more accurate way, as you can see in this mock-up here of some apartments. Being able to see apartments in this 3D space gives you a much clearer idea about what you're going to buy. Am I on the sunny side? Am I on the sunny side of the building or not, for example? And that's something that, when you're looking at survey plans, it can be very difficult for a house buyer to visualise and understand. And again, this is a view of what you could do if you had this 3D data in a 3D visualisation. And at this point, James talks about his foul sewer running through his back garden, past his barbecue as well. Anyway. So the ASaTS delivery approach. Now, at this point, James talks about the way ASaTS will be delivered, and it's a slightly different model for LINZ, and that those grey blocks are the current services that LINZ provides, and the modular way we're going to be delivering the system will allow us to add new service blocks and add future service blocks as we go. It's a much more modular system. Benefits can be shared across jurisdictions. Oh, right. So what he's talking about here is the approach we're taking with our vendor. We're working with a much more collaborative environment with the vendor. New Zealand is one of about 30 or 40 jurisdictions around the world that uses a Torrens land titling system. Other jurisdictions, all Australian states, Canadian states, we all use a Torrens system, and we all have a lot of similarities in the way we manage our land and title system. And the way we're approaching the ASaTS build with this vendor, we're looking at leveraging that so we can take benefit of what we're building and what this vendor is building for other jurisdictions as well. So instead of being a bunch of isolated Torrens systems, we're looking at being able to leverage off the same system and share all the information that we gain by building this system. And our vendor is looking at looking at sharing that information across our other jurisdictions as well. And that really provides us better value for money. So timeline of the project. Currently we're in a definition phase where we're going through a detailed definition of what the solution will look like. I'll probably just leave you to read the rest of that slide yourself. I can't really add much to it. Other than 2021 is the date for which we want to have this new ASaTS system live and operating. And the other point that James made here is that it's very important that in that final phase you see there, we decommission Land Online. So we plan to move fully to ASaTS and then decommission the old system. We don't want to be in a position where we're managing two systems at the same time. So by 2021 we'll have completely migrated to our new ASaTS system, and we will have fully decommissioned the old Land Online system. Whew. Questions? Not that I could promise to answer them.
One of the benefits of being here this morning to talk about this was, of course, we've got 21 jurisdictions represented in the meetings that are happening here this week, here in Wellington, right here on geographic information standards and geomatics. And it's helpful to just spread the word a little bit about what we're talking about here, because the provider with this kind of model needs other jurisdictions who are interested. Well, of course, there are already some, but there may be more, and it's just a question of people discovering that jurisdictions like ours, we consider ourselves fairly innovative in this sort of area, are looking at this kind of solution. So who else might be ready to join this approach? Anyway, we still have time for a few questions, if we can answer.
We'll do our best to answer.
Yeah, thanks for giving that presentation. Jeff Brown, I'm Surveyor General of the Australian Capital Territory in Australia. So this is something we're working towards as well. But just wondering if you're going down the same line that we're looking at incorporating, firstly, large developments. Now it's mandatory that the developers give us a 3D model that we can now integrate into the 3D models of the city that we're creating off our LiDAR data and going into the proposed 3D Cadastre as well. And the third thing in that is then incorporating the works executed 3D data, so you get a complete picture, particularly of large complex developments. So you not only see where the units are within the development, but where emergency service access and repairs and things like that are needed. Is that something that's being considered at this stage?
So one of the things I do know that's part of the ASaTS program, one of the streams is looking at automating the ingest of 3D data into the ASaTS system. And the approach there is, when Land Online was built, the process is that a surveyor has a workspace in Land Online, and they do most of their surveying work in their own software, like 12D, and then that last 10% they push through their workspace into Land Online. The current theory with ASaTS is that we don't need to have that workspace bit in ASaTS anymore. We're looking at all the work, the work being done in those third-party provider bits of software, and then if we can expose all the business rules to those third-party providers, the idea is that the surveyor will be able to do all their work in that package like 12D and then push it straight into Land Online, where it will be able to be stored and managed. So the idea is, I think, yes, we want to get that richness into ASaTS, and the idea is that we'll work with the third-party providers to just push it straight in. Not quite sure that answers your question, but that's probably about as good as I can do.
This is actually regarding the previous presentation, so you might be better to answer that one. Your one, actually, the address one. So we're using LINS data to search for addresses and features and locations, right, that are different to addresses but have names written as text. So the question is, does the address standard effort include locations that are not strictly speaking addresses, such as lakes, rivers, and hills and mountains, etc.? What about locations within addresses, such as lecture theatres and conference rooms?
So the way the standard works is it breaks an address down into a set of components. So it's very much about being able to, and at a conceptual level, it doesn't say what those components can be. It just describes a way for building up an address from a set of components. Now the profile we've implemented in New Zealand is about street address or postal address components. So it includes things like suburbs, which you can then link through to a suburb boundary. But because named places like lakes and rivers and things are not part of that street address, they're not part of our New Zealand profile. I guess there's no reason why you couldn't take it, and why a profile couldn't be created to consider those things. But currently they're not really considered part of a street address. You can download, of course, as you're doing, I think, from the LINS data service, the gazetteer and all those place names as a data set, but they're not really covered by 19160 in our New Zealand profile.
Given the way that we've been winging it for 20 minutes, I just did wonder if there was anybody in the audience, any New Zealand experts that wanted to just clarify anything. If we have, okay, just that I think we've done our best, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions.